It's right behind me, isn't it? Fine, I admit it. I'm building a castle. Let's talk about it. My friends have started and restarted Minecraft servers a number of times over the years, but because I never put together the timing, I never had the opportunity to join one of them. That changed when I was told that they were going to start a new world, one where we would all settle on a massive island with distinct build styles and different zones. I had done some building in Minecraft before this and had a general interest in making things that look cool, but by all means, I was still pretty novice at the style of building I enjoy today. I think because of my inexperience, the idea of medieval really called my name. Be honest, when we all started playing, one of the first builds we put together was a castle. I started playing on this world in early summer of 2023, and I've been working on that medieval build ever since. I started out with a pretty humble little house. This was soon after cherry trees were added, and I think you can tell by looking at this place how much I wanted to give them a try. Unfortunately, the original look of the interior is lost to time since I moved out, but I never had the heart to tear this place down. Recently, I found a good use, though. I use a lot of candles and got tired of stealing honeycomb from my neighbors, so I found a way to fit a farm in here. Jonesy from Fortnite is also in here, but he's a longtime resident, so I can't really evict him now, or else I might get in trouble with legal, so he's just roommates with the bees. Moving on from there, we have my real starter base. Much longer than I've been playing on this server, I've had this vision of an old, overgrown castle, like ruins that nobody has touched for years. I didn't actually end up doing that in the end, largely because my ideas drifted over time, but the remnants of that idea are present here. This is the first tower I built, and naturally I knocked it right over and covered it in foliage. To make it livable, I built this kind of scaffolding area that I think gives the impression of a group of archaeologists having moved into the ruins to investigate the location. At the back, I needed a nether portal, and I mean, you can call this little overgrown area lazy, but it introduced lore that I've been looking forward to implementing further down the line. This tower's busted up and overgrown, but the rest of the castle is still standing and looks like new. What's up with that? Maybe this magical portal that leads to a dimension where 1 block is the same as 7 blocks in the overworld has some other properties, like making 1 second equal to 7 seconds, increasing the flow of time around it. But that's lore, and not very important for the rest of this video, though it is a secret Mouska tool that will help us later. Moving on to the actual castle, let's take a look at the towers. This was the first thing I built for it, obviously coming into play on my starter base, but I think the design holds up to this day. Of course, the look is a little less refined than the more technically impressive parts of my future builds, but I think that works. These towers are meant to be like glue, binding the different elements of the build, so they don't really want to draw a ton of attention to themselves. This tower design really speaks to the way I built at the time and echoes some of the decisions I still make today. It involves a lot of darker colors with distinct glowing accents, simple patterns, and basic variations in depth to add some interest to the silhouette. The design is certainly not perfect, but I still think it serves its purpose well. It isn't a focal point, and I really didn't intend for your eye to linger on it for very long, so it makes perfect sense for it to just be interesting enough without insisting on itself. Now moving on to the walls. I unintentionally made a very cool decision early on with this castle. I built it wall by wall over a long period, learning more about building as I went. I think this has led to a profoundly nostalgic look to the overall build for me. When I look back on the original wall, I see who I was when I built it. I remember what I was doing, and it takes me back to worse times. I'm much better now because I build cooler things in Minecraft. So let's take a look at that first wall, the one that started this whole thing. This one fills me with such a warm and fuzzy feeling. This is the first time I built something and thought extensively about the future of this server, about everything I wanted to accomplish. This wall is probably the reason I started taking Minecraft more seriously and dedicated so much time to it. Call it rose-tinted glasses or sunk cost fallacy, but I love this wall. That being said, there's a lot I would do differently today. Doesn't really present any interesting variation in color, and the entire lower section is practically just a flat gray wall, which does make me cringe a little, but c'est la vie. We didn't stop here and I improved later on, so it's fun to come back and look at where I started. The next wall was this one right here. A little fun fact about this guy, it's actually what inspired the entire castle build. A long time ago at this point, I had an image in my head of an ornate castle hallway, lined with stained glass windows that reached to a ceiling far above. I still haven't built that. But trust me when I say that after the exteriors are done, that's the first interior that I'm working on. Next up was this guy, which is probably the weakest of the bunch these days. When I was working on this design, my goal was to experiment primarily with depth, using the same block type for the most of the build to force myself to create an interesting design without much color to build interest. I think I learned some valuable lessons from that experiment, and I like some of the concepts I played with here, but ultimately I think this wall just falls flat compared to some of the others. This one was a lesson in itself. I got tired of building full walls, or maybe just thought the walls were starting to look a little bit bland, so I decided to put some extra detail by designing individual segments of this one. The first thing I designed was this skull balcony, and I gotta say, I am still proud of this guy. Though, the parts directly surrounding it could have definitely used a couple more iterations. Like, what is that thing on the left supposed to be? And I might have changed up the colors if I was building this today. The area above is meant to be evocative of that same stained glass window element we talked about earlier, though the space constraints make it more evocative of an egg. Next door to this, we have, I don't really know what this is. Maybe a spider web with an eye behind it? I don't really know. This wasn't really well thought out, but the clock tower above it was, and that's all that really matters. The clock tower was, for a while, the tallest point on the build, and was definitely the point when I started getting asked about how tall I was intending to make this thing. Little did they know. Let's take a little break here. That's a lot of information that you probably skipped through. Let's talk about one thing I didn't do on any of these builds that I do a lot of these days. Texturing. When I say texturing, it's just a fancy word that I use to mean playing with colors. Minecraft is a game about materials. You begin by punching a tree to get wood, and then you make a pickaxe to break stone. A lot of the criticism of block vomit I see seems to be rooted in the associations that Minecraft is so good at building. Despite both being cubes with no visual difference between them, other than color, your Minecraft brain tells you that this one is a rock and the other one is wood. So putting them together doesn't make sense. The first step to giving builds an interesting texture is to break those associations and start thinking about blocks as colors. Take this basic villager house. It has logs for support beams, a wooden plank roof, and cobblestone walls. Functional, but not very pretty. We can upscale this while keeping the original build's vibe by just swapping out some of those blocks for blocks of similar but differing colors. Here, I changed out some of the blocks in the oak log support beams for mangrove and stripped spruce, introducing a gradient to imply weathering. Things like this will improve the look, but more importantly, it makes the build a better canvas to paint future details onto. It's not just weathering either. There are a million applications of this concept. Representing light and shadows, like under this lamppost, subtly shifting colors in a gradient to ease a color transition, or just creating a little visual interest to break up a pattern by changing out blocks for blocks of a similar color. Dude, were you even listening to anything I just said? I just went over my whole thing. I just explained all the texturing stuff. You weren't even listening?
No, I was.
Okay.
I was.
All right.
I was.
Whatever. Man, he's cooking. I love this robot guy. Now back to our regularly scheduled castle. Hello MTV and welcome to my Gatehouse. This came next and is the first example of a proper gradient on this build. It's not a very big one, but it's a gradient that I think provides a bit of well-needed visual interest considering these towers don't have a lot going on. The Gatehouse has a few different sources of inspiration. This section facing the courtyard draws on the Arc de Triomphe, sorry to my French viewers, as well as a bit of Hogwarts and even Grian's Hermitcraft 7 mansion. The window is just transparently the Sanctum Sanctorum window, and I will not apologize for that. Maybe I'm Doctor Strange, you don't know my life. The other side of the gatehouse, facing the exterior, is much more traditionally English, drawing on inspiration from places like Skipton Castle and Windsor Castle. The colors here, admittedly, are not very fun. At this point I was still hesitant to introduce too much noise, in heavy quotation marks, by changing up the textures. So the result was a fairly single-note build. That being said, I think the overall vibe is good. This looks like a gatehouse, like you might get stopped by two guards crossing their spears to tell you to halt. If there's one thing you need to know about my build style, it's that vibes are more important than anything else. I will combine Gothic architecture with Art Deco and Brutalist if I think it looks kind of cool. My lunacy is only constrained by the build limit. You might have noticed, while I was talking about the courtyard-facing gate, that I skipped over a pretty important detail. These guys! Originally, the OG tower design was going to go in these two spots, but when I tested that out in a creative world, I thought it looked really busy and somehow also boring. Too many spiky towers and patterns, not enough interesting stuff going on. So I came up with this idea, a couple of layered garden-type areas. Like elevated spots for the nobility to enjoy nature without having to interact with the people who live in their kingdom. God, ew, a pore. The next wall, barely even a wall, more like an outcropping or something. It's a lot of windows. This entire half of the build is heavily inspired by Notre Dame, at least superficially, and this part is no exception. I had a strong need to build a lot of stained glass windows, as well as some flying buttresses, so that's what we have going on. I am really proud of this one. It actually represents the point on this timeline where I started thinking about sharing my work. Holy self-glaze. As we talked about just a second ago, this half of the build is pretty heavily inspired by Notre Dame, and these next two walls are just following up on that theme. I really started to appreciate shaping and line work in the builds I admired at this point, so I started to go pretty hard on the rose windows. I'm really proud of both of these guys. But I'm also getting a little tired of talking about my past work at this point, so I'll cut most of the rest and just give you a close-up of one of my favorite elements. Smooth gradients are hard to come by in Minecraft, which is why I love using them when I get the chance. One of the only perfect gradients is to black by using light and darkness. A torch on a floor of blue concrete will create a natural gradient from blue to black. Obviously, this only works in caves or at night, or, thanks to a feature nobody else uses, behind tinted glass. Putting a light source at the bottom of a wall behind tinted glass will give a lovely little gradient, as seen here on the towers above the castle entrance. Now that I've spent 11 minutes and 38 seconds yapping about my past work, let's talk about the last wall. That's right, for 2 years I've been playing on this server, and I haven't completed the outline for my base. That ends today. We put a wall in place and make this collection of walls into an enclosed castle. Without a roof, whatever. So here's the inspiration. I watched John Wick 4. That's the only inspiration I have for this one. The duel scene, you know the one, is set in front of the triple arches at Sacré-Cœur, and I have been obsessed with making something that looks like that since I saw the movie. So we're building triple arches. The block palette is going to be pretty simple. A lot of spruce wood accents along with more limestone colored walls, which is an effect I'll pull together with a combination of stripped oak and stripped birch. That's enough talking though. I want to start building. I'll catch up with you when we finish up. Oh man. Oh man, oh man. I can barely believe it. The exterior walls are done. This castle is officially, finally, an almost completely enclosed space. This may sound like a joke to you guys, but I promise you, this is a long time coming. I laid out the scaffolding for this castle 2 years ago, and today I get to say that I have a base. Not a bunch of barely connected walls, a proper base. Almost enough to make a grown man cry. Let's give this wall a quick walk around, shall we? For the sides, I wanted to do stained glass, but considering the grandiosity of the surroundings, I figured a simple gradient wouldn't cut it. So I tossed together a couple of little designs. On the left, a golden apple tree, like the shop I run in the shopping district. And on the right, once we fly over here, an image of the serpent, my trading hall and one of the first builds I completed on the server. In the center, we've got a grandiose entrance, complete with useless pillars, and a massive door that does not open, featuring a tiny, itty-bitty little tiny door that does open. Out front, arguably most importantly, is the dueling grounds, where real Minecraft men settle their Minecraft differences. Speaking of which, didn't I get challenged to a duel recently?
"30 paces."
Have fun out there.
Are you ready, Mr. Hermes? Mr. Squig? Animas vestras deo commendo, incipimus sicut finimus, e saxus ad saxa, e facor ad fordinam. Fire! "20 paces."
Just kill him.
Those who cling to death live.
Those who cling to spawn die.
Fire!
Yay!
Yeah, that was big.
That was so
was big.
peak. That was so
That was,
peak.
that was actually that was an incredible voice acting.
Wait. We all saw that, right? He clearly shot before the guy even said fire, and nobody did anything? He wasn't even reprimanded. The duel was rigged.
A man opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.